All right, well, let's get into the final section of our podcast for today, that is Profiles in Success. And you cannot talk about the fitness industry and people who have built business leadership roles in fitness without talking about, well, two guys. But first, Arnold Schwarzenegger. How can you not mention him? The man is very impressive. He has very publicized successes and failures, and people have different opinions about him. But I can't say enough about his ability to generate business and to be serious about his life and not just fall on his laurels, but to take his opportunities seriously. Arnold Schwarzenegger is, of course, a great bodybuilder. He has been a leading bodybuilder since he was a teenager. He came to the United States already as a worldwide leading bodybuilder. He won Mr. Olympia 7 times. He won it 6 times and then left for a couple of years and came back and won it again. And he was a star from it. Almost immediately from his bodybuilding career, he ended up going into movies. And that doesn't necessarily prove he's a great businessman. So that's not really why I wanted to talk about him. Arnold Schwarzenegger took whatever money he got from his business, from the sporting opportunities that he had. He took them and he invested in all kinds of small businesses. What most people don't know is that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Frank Columbo, who was also a Mr. Olympia eventually, went into business together in California making a bricklaying company. Both of these guys are worldwide leading bodybuilders, and they started their own brick company to try to just make more money, just to try to turn some of the money they had into something more. And what they did is they called themselves European bricklayers or something like this, and they charged more on purpose. And everyone just assumed that they were dealing with better quality because they implied that they were from another place. These values that you don't know about. We know about it, and we'll show you. You can pay us. And that's what people did. People take that logic seriously. You charge a little bit more on purpose just to look like you're more. It's like a fake it till you make it. But that's what they did, and they were successful. They got into other things. They got into buying land on the idea that an airport was coming to this area, and then it didn't come. But it was such an interesting experience, and it had so much promise anyways that they just continued to do it. Now, one thing I wanted to mention when I was researching Arnold is that there's a difference between an entrepreneur and an investor. A lot of times, really good investors are also called great entrepreneurs, but I don't see that as being the case because the entrepreneur created the investment opportunity and you just saw it and you bought into it. And being a great investor is a deeply respectable thing to be. It's just as respectable as being an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur is the one who starts with nothing. An entrepreneur is the one who's in their shower going, oh, wait, that is a great idea. When I get out of the shower, I'm going to write it down and we're going to get started. That's entrepreneuring. Not, wow, these guys over here have been in business for 10 years and it's starting to go somewhere, so let me put my money into it. Arnold Schwarzenegger is both. In the articles I read about his business acumen, I noticed that a lot of people got them confused, though. He's an investor in a movie company, or he's an investor in a financial firm, and that somehow proves that he's a great entrepreneur. Well, no, it doesn't. It only proves that he saw a good opportunity and he recognized it and had the inner fortitude to take the risk, which is, like I said, awesome. But to be an entrepreneur is the bricklaying company. Being an entrepreneur is his mail order company, where he started making books and posters of himself and mailing them out himself. He started publishing a publication called Arnold Strong, and this is when he was still a teenager. And he actually had a quote that said, most of these bodybuilders are doing this mail order type of business, but they forget to mail out the products. But he didn't. He was very serious. He had a series of baskets that the work could go through, so he always knew where he was. He was just extremely organized in this way. Maybe it's German values, maybe it's just who he is. I think he's a little bit more successful than anyone from, than most people from any culture, so, you can't really apply it to anything but him. But he was a success, and he expanded very quickly. And now, and today, for instance, he owns a 747 jet. It's probably his for when he needs it, but he leases it to Singapore Airlines, and so he has a commercial interest in it. And so I don't know if he can use it whenever he wants. Maybe he decided he didn't need it as much as he thought he did. but he's making money from it too. So it might have been an investment opportunity all along, but he does own a plane. And you could say that's investment, is that entrepreneuring? Now, if he was to make it a system where he's constantly buying planes and leasing them to airlines around the world, well, that would be entrepreneuring. But owning a plane and leasing one plane, it's kind of like investment. And now, let's talk about another example. Let's say you buy houses and you fix them up and you flip them. That's an example of kind of both. You're an entrepreneur because you're creating this business, you're developing your own product in the form of a decrepit house, improved and ready to live in. So there's a service there. But you also take control of the asset as well, usually. And so it's also a product. And you're an entrepreneur because you did activity to improve and then sell, so you're involved in that. But you're also an investor because you put your money into an asset. So in a way, if you're selling products, you're always an investor. If you're creating the product from nothing and then trying to sell it, technically you're an investor too, but that's much more of an entrepreneur. Arnold Schwarzenegger is both. He's revolutionized the industry of fitness publication and literature, and he's definitely the most photographed or postered, I guess you would say, bodybuilder that there has ever been. Maybe a few guys later have been impressive as well, but Arnold is still the gold standard. And I cannot talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger as a businessman without also mentioning Joe Weider. Joe Weider is really considered the father of modern bodybuilding. I mean, he has his own branded nutrition, Joe Weider, proteins and creatines and all full supplements, and they're much more expensive than any other brand I know of. And he also has publications. He has competitions named after him. I mean, the man was royalty in the bodybuilding field until he died a couple of years ago. And he was the one who mentored Arnold Schwarzenegger into his business successes. And he has a quote that I wanted to read if I can find it real quick. Here it is. Well, just to give a few examples of Joe Weider's leadership in Arnold's life, Arnold Schwarzenegger used to publish advertisements in magazines about his books and his materials that he was trying to sell. And Joe Weider would make suggestions like, why don't you write, little details like fill within days to separate yourself from an industry that generally forgets to fill its orders at all. And then he would say other things like call your booklet limited edition because people love limited edition. So I think a lot of people, and especially Arnold, would say that Joe Weider was one of the influential figures in turning Arnold into what he was. You can't go on the internet and look up Joe Weider or look up Arnold without finding pictures of them together. So Arnold Schwarzenegger has definitely become like a mega star in the world. The tip top of the A-list actors, bodybuilding legend. He's been able to parlay that success into business success and political success. I mean, the man has almost achieved everything he's ever wanted to achieve. But he's received mentoring, and he's had things to learn as well. And, his personal failings have been documented as well, but I don't even want to mention them because we are dealing with a great, great man who deserves respect. From bricklaying to fitness heaven, mega stardom to movie stardom, the secret to Arnold Schwarzenegger was making a plan and following it through, and the ability to identify opportunities where they exist, and just the discipline. And I think it's one of the biggest parts about starting a business is learning how to deal with your own fear. And people that can do this deserve to be looked at by the public as examples. So big shout out to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Big shout out to Joe Weider, great man. I'm very pleased to have come to you this week with this material. We're going to be publishing a few articles on LinkedIn. We're going to be publishing a manifesto on the purpose of our community here, which is business education, specifically with an eye on education reform, because, like we've already said in this channel several times, we want to get business education in schools. We want to workshop students so that they're going through the steps that we talk about this as part of their normal education system. We want to empower young people. We want to empower the dreamers that might be watching our show. So I hope this talking about one industry, but the lessons are relevant to many industries. I hope it can be a little bit useful to you. Come back next week. We'll have something more. Thank you. All right, bye-bye.